Have you ever had that disturbing feeling that you are being silenced even before you open your mouth? That your ideas, no matter how well grounded they are dismissed not for their content, but simply because they challenge what everyone around you accepts as absolute truth. This is not paranoia. It is a reality that intensifies every day in our hyper-connected society, where divergent thinking is not only discouraged, but actively suppressed by increasingly sophisticated mechanisms of social control. What we are experiencing today is a subtle yet devastatingly effective form of censorship that doesn't need laws or government decrees to function. It operates through something much more powerful and insidious: algorithmic social pressure, digital conformity, and the collective fear of being labeled as different. This reality that you feel in your skin every day has deep roots in human history, but it has never been so refined in its methods. For millennia, human societies have developed mechanisms to maintain social cohesion and ensure that individuals do not destabilize the group with dangerous ideas. In primitive tribes, those who questioned ancestral traditions could be banished or eliminated. In ancient Greece, Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth with his uncomfortable questions. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church created an elaborate system to identify and suppress heresies, burning not only books, but also the people who dared to think outside established dogmas. In the 20th century, totalitarian regimes perfected mind control techniques that led victims to police themselves, internalizing censorship so deeply that they didn't even realize they were being controlled. But what we are living through today represents a qualitative evolution of these historical methods of control. We no longer need bonfires or concentration camps. We don't even need explicit censorship laws. What we have now is something far more elegant and efficient, a system that makes us censor ourselves voluntarily, believing that we are exercising our freedom of choice. It is a mechanism so well designed that its victims often defend the very system that oppresses them, fiercely attacking anyone who tries to expose its existence. The central element of this new form of control is what we can call digital manufactured consensus. Unlike traditional propaganda systems, which relied on centralized institutions like newspapers, radio, and television, the current system of opinion shaping operates through decentralized networks that appear democratic and participatory. On social media, you get the feeling that you're part of a great public debate, freely expressing your opinions and interacting with a diversity of perspectives. But this feeling is a carefully constructed illusion. The algorithms that govern these platforms are not neutral. They are programmed to maximize engagement, and they have discovered that the best way to do this is to create echo chambers that reinforce users' pre-existing beliefs, while simultaneously demonizing and marginalizing dissenting voices. When you express an opinion that goes against the dominant current, the algorithm not only reduces the reach of your message, but also directs people to it who will aggressively attack it. The result is that you quickly learn it's better to stay quiet, that it's safer to keep your doubts and questions to yourself. This process of self-censorship is reinforced by a phenomenon that social psychologists know as the spiral of silence. When we perceive that our opinions are in the minority or unpopular, we naturally tend to avoid expressing them publicly. But in the digital environment, this natural tendency is artificially amplified. Algorithms make dissenting opinions seem much more isolated than they really are, creating a false sense that you are the only one who thinks differently. At the same time, they amplify voices aligned with dominant narratives, making them seem more numerous and representative than they are in reality. The result is a massive distortion of public perception about what people actually think. Surveys consistently show that there is far more diversity of opinion among the population than what is publicly expressed on social media or in the mainstream media. Millions of people have doubts, questions, and alternative perspectives, but they have been trained to believe they are alone in their thoughts. This sense of intellectual isolation is no accident. It is the result of a system designed to create conformity through fear and social shame. The sophistication of this system goes far beyond what most people imagine. It does not operate solely through direct censorship or algorithmic manipulation. It creates a cultural environment where certain ideas become literally unthinkable. Through subtle conditioning techniques, words and concepts are loaded with such intense emotional connotations that people develop visceral aversions to certain lines of thought before even examining them rationally. This process begins in schools, is reinforced in universities, and culminates in the professional environment where expressing certain opinions can mean the end of a career. I want to pause for a moment to ask you directly, in which situations have you felt the need to hide or disguise your true opinions out of fear of the consequences? Those moments when you knew you had something important to say but chose silence because you realized your perspective would not be welcomed? I know we often keep these experiences to ourselves, perhaps out of fear of admitting that we bowed to social pressure, or because we've normalized this self-censorship as simply diplomacy or common sense. But your experience of being silenced is not isolated, and acknowledging this is the first step toward reclaiming your intellectual autonomy. If this recognition resonates with you, share in the comments, "I silenced myself when." Your honesty may validate the experience of countless others who have gone through similar situations and help break the illusion that we are alone in this fight for intellectual authenticity. The mechanism behind this widespread self-censorship operates through what we might call reputational terrorism. In a society where our professional and social identity increasingly depends on our digital presence, the prospect of being publicly labeled as a bearer of problematic ideas becomes an existential threat. We're not just talking about losing followers on social media. We're talking about losing jobs, opportunities, relationships, and even access to basic services. This system of social control is far more efficient than any form of governmental censorship because it turns every individual into their own censor. The genius of this system lies in how it presents itself as liberating and progressive. It doesn't openly say that certain ideas are forbidden. Instead, it associates those ideas with morally repugnant traits: intolerance, ignorance, malevolence. Who would be crazy enough to want to be seen as intolerant or ignorant? Thus, censorship operates not through explicit prohibition, but through the manipulation of social identity. You are not forbidden from thinking certain things. You are simply conditioned to believe that good and intelligent people don't think those things. This conditioning is particularly effective because it exploits our fundamental need for social belonging. As highly social primates, our survival has always depended on our ability to integrate and be accepted by the group. Being excluded or rejected by the group activates the same neural circuits that process physical pain. Our brain literally interprets social ostracism as a life threat. The architects of modern control understand this vulnerability and exploit it ruthlessly. They know that most people would rather give up their intellectual authenticity than face the risk of social rejection. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this new form of control is how it infiltrates our own minds. It's not just about making us shut up publicly. The ultimate goal is to make us stop thinking forbidden thoughts altogether. Through a process that psychologists call internalization, we begin to police our own thoughts, developing a kind of digital superego that punishes us internally whenever our mind ventures into unauthorized territories. We have reached the point where we don't even need external censors because we have become our own oppressors. This internalization of censorship represents a complete victory of the control system because it eliminates even the possibility of resistance. When people stop thinking subversive thoughts, they stop seeking information that might contradict dominant narratives. They stop asking uncomfortable questions. They stop connecting dots that could lead to problematic conclusions. The result is a form of cultural lobotomy where entire societies lose the capacity for independent critical thinking. The role of technology in this process cannot be underestimated. Digital platforms are not just neutral vehicles for the expression of ideas. They are architectures of psychological control designed to shape behavior and thought. Every aspect of their interface, from recommendation algorithms to like and share systems, is carefully calibrated to encourage conformity and discourage dissent. These systems are constantly tested and refined using behavioral psychology and cognitive neuroscience techniques to maximize their effectiveness. But technology is merely a tool. Behind it are very specific human interests that benefit from maintaining the status quo. Giant corporations that profit from the predictability of consumer behavior, political institutions that rely on civic passivity to maintain their power, cultural elites who have built their identity and social status around certain ideological orthodoxies. These groups do not necessarily conspire in a coordinated way, but their interests converge in the creation and maintenance of an environment where independent thought is discouraged and conformity is rewarded. The irony is that Many of the people who most fervently defend this system genuinely believe they are fighting against oppression and promoting freedom. They have been conditioned to see any questioning of the system as a form of reactionism or extremism. This is the mark of a truly sophisticated control system. It convinces its victims that they are in fact its beneficiaries and that any criticism of the system is a threat to their well-being. Recognizing this system does not mean embracing conspiracy theories or paranoia. It simply means accepting that the same impulses that have always led human groups to suppress dissent continue to operate today, only with more sophisticated tools. It means understanding that the authoritarian tendency is not a historical aberration, but a constant of human nature that manifests in different ways in different eras. Our time is no exception. It has only developed more elegant and effective methods of social control. The question we need to ask is not whether this control system exists, but what we can do to preserve our intellectual autonomy within it. The first answer is to develop awareness. You cannot resist something you cannot see. Once you understand how social pressure mechanisms operate, you can begin to make more deliberate choices about when to yield to them and when to resist. You can start to distinguish between your own genuine opinions and those implanted in you through social manipulation. The second answer is to actively seek intellectual diversity. This means intentionally stepping outside your echo chambers, looking for sources of information that challenge your beliefs, and exposing yourself to perspectives that make you uncomfortable. It means recognizing that intellectual discomfort is not something to avoid, but something to cultivate as a sign of growth. It means developing the courage to change your mind when presented with convincing evidence, even if it means admitting you were wrong about something important. The third answer is to cultivate relationships with people who value intellectual honesty above social conformity. This may mean seeking out smaller, more intimate communities where it's possible to have genuine conversations about controversial topics without fear of public retaliation. It may mean distancing yourself from environments where ideological performance is more valued than the sincere pursuit of truth. It may mean accepting that you will have fewer friends on social media, but more authentic relationships in real life. The fourth answer, perhaps the most important, is to develop a personal identity that does not depend entirely on external approval. This requires deep work in self-knowledge and developing trust in your own judgment. It means learning to tolerate the anxiety that comes with uncertainty and ambiguity, rather than always seeking the comfort of easy certainties provided by external authorities. It means developing an internal moral compass that can guide you even when all the voices around you are telling you you're going the wrong way. This process of developing intellectual autonomy is not just a matter of personal freedom, it is a civilizational necessity. Societies that lose the ability for self-criticism and genuine debate inevitably become fragile and dysfunctional. They lose the ability to adapt, to change, to correct errors, to innovate and grow. They become vulnerable to crises that could have been avoided if more people had been willing to ask hard questions and challenge established consensus. History is full of examples of societies that collapsed precisely because they developed highly effective mechanisms for suppressing dissent. The Soviet Union is an obvious example, but there are many others. Entire civilizations have vanished because they lost the ability to question their own fundamental premises. What we are experiencing today may look different in its methods, but it follows the same basic logic. The creation of an environment where certain ideas become literally unthinkable, where certain questions cannot be asked, where certain possibilities cannot be considered. The challenge we face is how to maintain our essential humanity in a world that increasingly rewards robotic behavior. How to preserve our capacity for independent thought when we are constantly bombarded with messages telling us what we should think. How to maintain our intellectual courage when the price of honesty can be so high. How to balance our need for social belonging with our responsibility to seek truth, even when that truth is inconvenient or unpopular. These are not abstract or academic questions. They define the quality of our human experience and the kind of society we are creating for future generations. Every time you choose to express an honest opinion instead of saying what is socially expected, you are making a small contribution to the preservation of intellectual freedom. Every time you ask a genuine question instead of accepting a ready-made answer, you are exercising mental muscles that our society is systematically trying to atrophy. Resistance to this control system does not require grand acts of heroism. It begins with small acts of intellectual authenticity. Reading a book that challenges your beliefs, asking a question that might be misunderstood, admitting you don't know something everyone assumes you should, refusing to repeat a slogan that sounds nice but that you don't truly understand. These small acts of resistance may seem insignificant, but they are the building blocks of a free mind. The future of human freedom may very well depend on our collective ability to preserve spaces for genuine thought, sincere doubt, and honest intellectual exploration. This requires not just individual courage, but also the creation of institutions and communities that protect and nurture intellectual diversity. It requires the development of a culture that values the pursuit of truth over the maintenance of comforting narratives. If these reflections have touched on something you've been feeling, but perhaps haven't found the words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your unease and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth where genuine thought is welcome and necessary. Join us in this ongoing journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with greater wisdom and authenticity in a world that often pressures us to conform and silence ourselves. If you appreciated this reflection and believe it may help others recognize their own experience of being silenced, leave a like so more people can find this content. Your simple action might be what allows someone who feels alone in their doubts, to discover that they are not as isolated as they thought. The final choice remains yours. You can continue allowing others to define the limits of what you are permitted to think, or you can begin to reclaim your intellectual autonomy. You can keep living in fear of expressing your doubts and genuine questions, or you can accept that an authentic life necessarily involves discomfort and uncertainty. The price of conformity may seem low in the short term, but in the long run, it is devastating. You gradually lose contact with yourself, with your own perceptions, with your own ability to navigate the world using your own intelligence. You become a stranger to yourself, living a life designed by others, pursuing goals you didn't choose, defending ideas you never critically examined. This is the true tragedy of modern mind control. It not only robs us of our freedom, it robs us of our very humanity. But this loss is not irreversible. At any moment, you can decide to stop, question, think for yourself. At any moment, you can choose courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, truth over social safety. This choice is always available, but only you can make it.
You don't have children. Is part of the reason you don't have children because you are fearful for the future?
No, it's not a conscious decision. I just never really thought about it. It's not
That's
something
so refreshing to hear.
It's just, sometimes I tell people it's the same way I don't have an elephant. I just never thought about it.
I love that. I've never had that response. I'm someone who doesn't have children, and that's just such a wonderful thing to hear. Thank you, Yuval.
One of the key problems I see today in the world is that you have an extremely cynical view of humans and of human societies spreading both on the right but also on the left. They say that the only reality is power, that all social interactions, all human interactions are actually power struggles, that all human institutions are just conspiracies to gain power, that journalists, scientists, historians, judges, politicians, these are just conspiracies to gain power. Whenever somebody tells you something, you shouldn't ask, is it true? Because nobody cares about the truth. This is naive. They would tell you, no, this is a power play.
Who benefits?
Who benefits?
Yeah.
Whose privileges are being served? Whose interests are being served? This is something that Donald Trump agreed with Karl Marx, at least on that everything is just a power struggle. And if you think like that, all trust collapses, and the only thing that is left standing, that can remain standing, is a dictatorship. This is not just extremely cynical, this is just wrong. People are not these power-crazy demons.
There is this naive expectation that if a network spreads bad information, fake news, conspiracy theories, it will destroy itself. And this is not the case. Some of the most powerful networks in history were completely delusional, and still they were immensely powerful. Because power in history, in human societies, it can mean different things. It can be the technical power to manipulate external reality, and for instance, to create an atom bomb. To create an atom bomb, you need to know physics. If you spread lies and fictions about physics, you will not be able to build a bomb. But power in human networks also depends on the ability to get a lot of people to agree on something and cooperate on something. If you want to build an atom bomb and you just know physics, you will not succeed. You need millions of people to help you. You need people to mine uranium and to build nuclear reactors and to grow wheat and potatoes, so all the miners and the physicists will have something to eat. How do you get millions of people to cooperate? In history, it's often done with fictions, with stories, and a story doesn't need to be true in order to succeed in uniting people. To build a bomb, you need to know the truth about physics or the bomb won't explode. But a powerful story can explode even if it's based on fictions and fantasies.